Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Comblouzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Kootenay Silver. Kootenay is a junior exploration company focused on the discovery and development of silver deposits in Mexico. The company has successfully discovered 3 deposits with resources totaling up 214 million ounces of silver equivalent in the measured and indicated categories, and another 54.9 million ounces of silver equivalent in the inferred category. Kootenay has one of the largest junior-owned silver resource bases in Mexico. It's currently focused on its flagship Columba project, where a drill program comprising at least 3,000 meters is currently underway. Today I have the pleasure of having with me on the webinar Jim McDonald, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer at Kootenay Silver. The format of today's webinar will be comprised of 2 parts. In the first part, Jim will provide an introduction to Kootenay and then update you on the latest developments at Columba. In the second part, we'll take your questions live, so please send us your questions using the chat and we'll get to as many as we can. I'll note that you can type your questions in at any point throughout today's webinar. To start, I'll handle the disclosures and then turn it over to Jim. So for Kootenay Silver, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Kootenay corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Kootenay-specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Jim to update you on Kootenay and what you have to look forward to with the company.
Great. Thanks, Taylor. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. And so Kootenay Silver, Taylor just gave a nice introduction here already. We're focused in Mexico for the discovery of silver deposits in Mexico. And we've been very successful in doing that with the discovery of 3 different deposits. And we're on to what looks like our 4th and most exciting discovery to date, where we're focusing our efforts on the high-grade Columba project. So the forward-looking statement slide you can reference on our website. So as Taylor pointed out here, we've got a very large silver resource base here in Mexico, one of the largest for a junior company. And this gives us excellent leverage to the silver price. And so people who like to speculate and invest in silver, we provide a lot of leverage to that silver price. And then we've got this exciting growth potential in discovery through the drill bit, and that's happening now on our Columba high grade project, so which is our 4th discovery that I'm referring to. And so all of this combined together gives us a real great potential for a re-rating of the stock. A capital structure you can see here. Key shareholders: Eric Sprott, Condire Fund out of Dallas, management directors and institutions mostly refers to managed money, a lot of that out of Switzerland. And then investments from major companies. These are past investments, not current shareholders, but it's a testament to our discovery success because they've invested based on different discoveries we made. So Coeur Mining, because of the La Discover resource discovery, Agnico Eagle because of the original Promontorio discovery, and then American because of a second discovery we call La Negra, which is on that same Promontorio property. And we just put out a resource update on that project to include that as a second discovery with an excellent result, and I'll come back to that in a moment. You can see here shares issued and outstanding, 457 million shares issued and outstanding. Current market cap around 32 million Canadian. Trading range of 6 cents to 22 cents in the last 52 weeks. And the average daily volume over the last 90 days is over 500,000 shares. And you can see when the silver begins to move in the upward pattern, or gets a bid in the market, so to speak, our daily volume picks up quite a bit and our price picks up as well. So when there's a interest in the silver market, we're typically over 1 million shares a day. At the end of June, we had a cash position of 3.2 million Canadian, and we started drilling our most recent round of drilling here just several weeks ago on Columba, and are advancing on that. So let's talk about Columba here. It's a new high-grade discovery. We've been really focused on that for the last 3.5 years. Just this year, we made our final payments on the property, and we now own 100%. Very big milestone there. And then our resource projects, we've updated our Promontorio La Negra resource, and really resulted in a great bump up in silver equivalent ounces here. We now have 214 million silver equivalent ounces in the measured indicated, and another 54.9 category between Promontorio, La Negra, and La Ciguera. So this new resource calculation, Promontorio La Negra, included a maiden resource for the La Negra discovery, and was an update on the original Promontorio resource. And so this really bumped us up quite a bit. We were approximately 136 million ounces of silver equivalent M&I before this. So really providing a lot of leverage to the silver price. In addition to these discoveries, these discoveries are backed by a prospecting effort that's always got some activity going on for us in the background, where we're actively looking for new mineralized zones, new projects, or new opportunities. And many of these are early stage, and so we bring on partners to advance those. And the most advanced of these partnerships that we entered into is the Cervantes Gold Copper property that our partner earned their interest in, and we sold our remaining interest to them for 10 million shares and a 0.5% royalty, and we still hold a large shareholding there. So where we are, all our assets are in northern Mexico. You can see in the map here, the inset on the left, up in northern Mexico. And the high-grade Columba discovery that we're drilling now is on the extension of the famous Sierra Madre trend that's shown in red. And that is the trend where many of the big silver producing districts sit in Mexico. And one of our resource properties, La Ciguera, sits in one of those famous districts called Parel, where over 800 million ounces of silver have been produced to date. The other resource project, Promontorio, which includes Promontorio and La Negra, is in southern Sonora state. So recent milestones and catalysts are really centered around advancing that Columba project, financing it. We filed a 4311 report on it. So it's non-resource report at this stage, and we're looking to, and then we've recently updated our resource in Promontorio La Negra, and then have released also the first assays from our current drill program here just a couple weeks ago, and where we got some excellent high-grade hits again on the D vein where we're currently focused. And we'll come back to that. So we've got a 50,000 meter drill program that is a staged program that we're undertaking here. The current program is a very modest 12 to 15 hole program out of that. And our objective here is for this to culminate in a maiden resource. We're looking to do that by this time next year after this phase of drilling. And so just progress to the next stage, and our main focus, Columba. And so a little bit about the Columba high-grade discovery here. When we first got introduced to the property 4 years ago and entered into an option to earn 100%, which we now hold 100% interest in, there had been no exploration done in over 40 years. Pretty incredible, even though there had been 2 periods of past historic production, 1900 to 1910, and then about 1958 to 1960. And what attracted us to the project were the historic records from an old mine shaft that was put down in that early 1900 era. They had gone down 200 meters vertically, put 6 tunnels out, so they're obviously getting ready for some serious production there. The mine was flooded, so we couldn't get into it, but old records showed assays from those tunnels of real nice high-grade silver on one particular vein called the F vein. So our first round of drilling after acquiring the option was to go in and test that. Those numbers proved to be accurate. And not only that, but there's multiple other veins on the project that we saw, and many of those are returning really excellent widths and grades. And we're highlighting here in the upper left, you can see for yourself, where we're almost 18 meters at 650 gram per ton silver, for example, and over 2,000 grams per ton over 6 meters, and 34 meters of a half kilo. So some incredible intercepts on these different veins. And so to date, before we started this current drill program, we had completed 135 holes and 27,000 meters of drilling, and now are advancing on the next stage, as I said, about a 12 to 15 meter hole program currently underway. And so a little bit about the geology and the potential we see here on Columba. What we're looking at here in yellow are the veins, the principal veins. And so in this direction here, we have 4 kilometers, and in the opposite direction, we have 3 kilometers now that we see. And what we're looking at here is a old caldera. It's an old volcano, and you can kind of see the rim of that old volcano here on these ridge tops. I'm not sure if this is drawing correctly or not. I hope it does. But the point is, this is an old volcano that we're sitting in, and the center of that caldera, which is the low point right in the middle where the arrow of the photograph, the shaft is the lowest point on the property erosionally and elevation-wise, and it's just clipped the top of the veins where they start to become productive and have good grade. And when you walk out of that low point, out of that caldera, upwards on the slopes in any direction along the veins, you will start to lose the vein, and you'll start to lose your silver until they essentially disappear. You can still map your structure, but your silver's gone and your vein may or may not be there. But yet, when you drill down to that, at least this erosional low level, which is generally around 1,700 meters above sea level, you hit the vein and you start to get good grades. So what that means to us geologically is that this thing has barely been eroded. And so whatever was put down here originally and deposited is still there. So it's almost entirely preserved from erosion. This is like a textbook example of these type of vein deposits. Geologically speaking, you do great field school here. And so when you look at the size of the footprint of the veining system that we have, here it is here on the right-hand side, the red dots are where we've drilled on the different veins. And you look at the size of our vein system on the right, compared that to the middle, that's the Panuca Vizsla project, and that's over 200 million ounces now. And then on the far left is the Las Chispas mine that's under production by Silvercrest, and that's somewhere, the resources there are somewhere north of 130 million ounces now. And so we see by the size of the structures that we have, the length of them, and the overall scope, that this is a property that certainly has a scope for 100 million ounces of silver, or even multiples of that. And then our drilling results certainly support that thesis, and we'll get into that here in the next slide. Just want to point out on the right-hand side, we've got this shaded area. Here, these are fractions that we do not own. And so when we look at a little bit of detail and dive in here, These are the principal veins. In the middle of the image is where the F vein is. I don't know if that's drawing or not. But right in the center is the F vein. That's where you see most of the dots. And that's the F vein where it was historically worked. We've got over 40 holes defining 700 meters of strike down to 200-meter depth. So we know very consistently hitting that vein. And then we hit two other veins that don't even come to surface. Great widths and grades occurring there. So we know there's a resource to be defined. It will need some infill drilling. It's still open to depth. And the upper right, you can see highlights there of 44 meters of over 300 grams silver with 6 meters of 2,000 grams per ton. And then on the far right, I just want to point out a 1.6 meter interval of 459 silver with a high grade of over a kilo. And the reason I want to point that out is at surface, you see no veining at all. You can map your structure, no veining, no silver values. But when you drill down to that key depth, you're into good vein, good grade, and good and excellent grades, in fact. So again, this thing is almost entirely preserved from erosion. And then when we look at the south central part of the image, we have on the left, you can see the D vein and the B vein. These veins are both have the best grades and widths to date. B is very lightly drilled. D is where we've got our best intercepts to date. You can see there 34 meters of half kilo with a almost 2.5 meters of nearly 6,000 gram per ton silver. 90 meters above that was nearly 30 meters of 453 grams per ton silver and almost an 18 meter core of 650 grams per ton. So some incredible intercepts there on that D vein. The B vein shows similar potential with hits like 9 meters of almost 700 grams per ton, 13 meters of over 400 grams per ton, both with good width and cores of over a kilo. And so I just want to also point something out. I'll go back to that image. These vein systems typically have couple of structures that hold the bulk of your ounces. In the Coppola Panuca there in the center, that's over 200 million ounces of resource there now. And just newer discovery, one zone, one structure has half of those ounces in it, for example. And then in the Las Chispas mine operation, 80% of the ounces are in this area in the bottom center of the image. So you'll get a couple of key structures that will hold the bulk of the ounces. And we're focused right now on expanding what we've drilled on the D vein because that's where we've got our best widths and grades. And it looks like it'd be one of those structures that really makes the whole project work. So we're focused on expanding that. And so we'll now run through some long sections here. We're going to look at the F vein, we'll look at the B vein, and we're going to look at the D vein. So in the F vein long section, the white lines, that's the shaft and the tunnels. And you can see from the far left to the far right, we're hitting nice grades and decent widths and narrow to medium widths here. What we don't show, we're just showing the vein proper of the F vein. We're not showing the hang wall vein or the footwall vein or the medium and low grade stockwork zones that are around this. So these high grade portion of the veins will go from sort of 1 meter to 5 meters wide. And then we'll have these stockworks that can be anywhere from 5 to 30 meters wide around them. And so from one end to the other, we're getting hits such as 6 meters over 600 grams per ton, 2.5 meters to 800 and then to the far right, we're still in good grades, 1.94 meters of over 400 grams. And then in the bottom of the image, you can see hole 123, a narrow interval of over 700 grams per ton. It's the deepest hole, still open. And then hole 121 over to the far bottom right. Similar story with over 2,000 grams per ton there. So we know there's a resource here. It needs infill drilling to be able to define that, and it's still open to depth. And then on the D vein, the D vein shows the geologic model here really well too, because when you look up on the top, these high intercepts up high, you hit the vein, but you have really no values or very low grade. And then as you get deeper, you're getting 100 grams, 200 grams, 300 grams, and then over a kilo. The key is to get into that interval that's around 1,700 meters above sea level, and you're getting into your real good grades. So we're open in all directions here. We got excellent widths and grades all through this vein. And we're now systematically stepping out at 50 plus meters away from these drill holes and to expand on the whole scope of that. And then next year we want to come back early in the new year with 20,000 meters more drilling. And we hope that'll be enough to get us to our maiden resource by this time next year. So the highlights holes here you can see, and hole 110, and then hole 125. A real fat zone in here. We got that 17.8 meters to 650 silver, and then 90 meters deeper is 34 meters, a half kilo. So then on the B vein, another area where we see, once we get near that 1,700 meters above sea level, we see these really nice widths showing up in really good grades. 13 meters over 400 grams per ton, for example, 2 meters over a kilo. And we got 9 meters, almost 700 grams per ton, and 4.5 meters there of over a kilo as well. So open in all directions again, very lightly drilled here. And we'll start a systematic step-out program here on the next round of drilling for the new year on B vein. And in the meanwhile, we're doing this 12 to 15 hole, 3,000 meter program on the D vein. And here's a plan map of that. This is the D vein from the upper left to the lower right. You also see these other veins coming in and intersecting it well, and they also are showing some good grade potential. So on the D vein, what we're looking at here, the red dots are all the holes that we've drilled to date. And then the yellow stars are holes that we've completed or are drilling. And then the yellow dots are the remaining proposed holes that we're drilling. And so we're just looking to expand the footprint of this. This is testing about a 400 meter strike length from one end to the other, and then a vertical depth of 250 to 300 meters. And so you see in our first holes that we released a couple of weeks ago, every hole hit nice width and nice grade. Hole 136, almost 3 meters over 300 grams per ton. And then a little deeper, 4 meters of 340 with a high of 800 grams per ton inside that. And then hole 138, where we had 13.5 meters of almost 600 grams per ton and an 8 meter interval of over 800. Real strong zone and really nice, and expanding on those hits that we had that are like 18 meters of 650 grams per ton, for example. So we're just continuing drilling this pattern, stepping out. Be probably about a week away from the next assay results here, and a couple of weeks from wrapping up the drilling itself. So then next year, what we're doing here is, this image is just an expanded view of what we just looked at. So you can see in the red dots what we've already drilled, the yellow stars showing the 136, 137. We've released those holes already. And then what we're showing to the right is following along strike here, because we can follow this structure for 1,000 to 1,100 meters in that direction until it looks like it's going to hit the B vein. So for next year, we just want to do a systematic program, more aggressive step outs about 100 meters apart, and drill test the entire strike of this excellent structure here. And so that brings us to the next stage after we culminate these 12 to 15 holes. After we finish that up, we'll be going on to a 20,000 meter program, focusing on the D vein, B vein, and F vein, and looking to be able to come to a maiden resource at the end of that. And in addition to that, I have to say, we're focused on these areas where we have these excellent intercepts already. I just want to skip back here and get a plan map. But we've also got these huge strike lengths here of untested vein, J vein. They splay off the J vein, what we call the Preciosa vein here. Extension of the F vein, all of this E vein here, and the north end, J vein up there. So you're following the next 20,000 meters. Well, there's a lot of exploration to be done on these additional veins as well, but we're focused on testing these here, F, D, and B zones, because we'd like to get to a maiden resource, and we can see potential in that area for a pretty substantial size resource. So now just flip back to where we were and talk a little bit about the resource projects. So we've been doing a little work to advance our resource projects without having to do any drilling, and we want to prepare them for a silver bull market where we can attract the capital, get them advanced. They both deserve to be advanced. They both deserve more drilling. There's expansion potential on both projects. And with regards to La Ciguera, very interesting project here. We've got a pit-constrained resource of 51.5 million ounces of silver M&I at 86 grams, and another 11.5 million in the inferred at 80. And that resource sits in the upper right-hand corner here by the title La Ciguera Discovery. And what we're looking at in yellow is this mineralized trend that comes out of the Santa Barbara, San Francisco del Oro part of the Parral district. And down there, over 500 million ounces of silver have been produced to date. They've been producing for 400 years. And Grupo Mexico is mining at a 2,000 meter depth today. And the ore zones started at surface in that district. So this is the kind of district, once you get into production, you're finding and replacing reserves for literally decades to come. And La Ciguera's got a lot of upside potential. It's sort of a sheeted stockwork type deposit with these grades and open pit constrained. And what we've done with a couple of things about La Ciguera, this resource sits in a 10-kilometer long structure that's open in both ends and open to depth. And there's multiple other structures with good silver intercepts on them as well that need to be drill tested. So the potential for discovery of additional ounces is really good here. But one thing that could have a more immediate impact, and we'd like to do a resource update on this project in the new year, because we think the geologic model here, or the resource model, is does not take into the geologic complexity and has thus diluted the grade. So we think there's a good opportunity here, because we think the grade of the resource is actually higher than the 86 grams. And we've completed a detailed geologic model of that resource, and we're seeing that the silver is more restricted than the resource model shows. So we're just preparing that for a resource update in the new year. We think it'll have a bump. And that'll be interesting, because on paper, financial models at a mid-20s silver price, the current resource starts to look pretty interesting, like you need to push it forward. So a better grade and a slightly better silver price, and this project could certainly attract capital to take it on to some resource expansion and a PEA. So we just want to get it set up for that. Then Promontorio La Negra, we just updated the resource there. and real nice bump in ounces. And the reason we did it, two things. We wanted to update promontorial resource estimate to the 2023 numbers for metal prices. And we wanted to include the La Negra discovery, which had never been included. Now, the La Negra discovery was what attracted Pan American to come in and do a deal with us. They were going to carry the whole thing to production, leave us with 25% interest at the end if La Negra got to 50 million ounces on its own. Now, it didn't get there. You can see it's 22 million ounces of indicated and 4.6 of inferred, a real nice grade for open pit constrained, 129 grams in the indicated. And if you look at a slightly higher cutoff at 50 grams, this number in the indicated goes up to 143 and the inferred goes up over 130. And you only lose about 2 million ounces there. So real good potential for smaller operator on this, simple metallurgy, and in a simple leach circuit, it looks like from our work, getting into the 80%, or maybe even 90. And so then with the promontorial resource, our big low-grade original discovery here, and the changing metal prices really added a lot of silver on the silver equivalent side because of the lead, zinc, gold prices today. So it now contains measured indicated 140 million ounces silver equivalent and just shy of 40 on the inferred with some pretty nice grade, 104 grams silver equivalent and almost 85. So we are, in addition to this resource update, there's some recommendations on next work to do. There's potential at promontorial between two different zones to add more ounces, and there's potential at depth, and then at La Negra, same thing. It's still open to depth, and some very high grades in that deposit. So it's something that could be very interesting there, expanding that project to depth and looking for essentially a feeder. And then on the management board side of things, the message here is that our management board of directors has experience right from grassroots discovery to mine building and mine operations and the financing of all those stages along the way. Myself, a geologist by education, have been in the junior resource sector since 1988 and was one of the founders of National Gold, where we bought the Mulatos deposit at the bottom of the gold market 22 years ago, and from Placer Dome and Kennecott. And then that was a 2.2 million ounce gold deposit in Mexico. And we brought in John McCluskey and Chester Miller from Alamos Minerals to help us finance that acquisition and formed Alamos Gold in 2003. So I stayed on that board until 2012. And then Ken Berry, the chairman of the company, he most recently put into production an open pit heap leach gold mine in Arizona called the Moss Mine. And then Raj Kangs, our CFO, Dale Britliff, our VP of Exploration, Tiziano Romanoli, advisor to Geneva. He was a key investor and financer of the Alamos Gold story early on. And then Hans Smit, he's a founder of Orla Mining and Grade Resources, and he's an advisor. His expertise is on the resource stage, taking them to feasibility. Really well respected and known for that. John Mortar was the CFO of Alamos. He's a chair of our audit committee. Tony Retta is the CEO of Tectonic and formerly of Kamenak. And then Joe Jufrey, more recently joined our board, and he was the chief legal officer for Nevsun. So really well-rounded for junior company experience right from that grassroots discovery to mining. So we can round this out now. We're investing in Kootenay Silver. We've got this very large silver asset base, one of the largest junior-owned ones in Mexico, gives us excellent leverage to the silver price. We've got these aggressive ambitions for Columba and drilling and getting ourselves to a maiden resource. And of course, Columba is a new high-grade discovery. Looks like we're identifying a new vein district, in fact. So this really gives us a lot of potential for a re-rating here. And so I think, Taylor, that rounds us out. We can go to questions now.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Jim, for the great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar. And just a reminder to everybody on the line, you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. That said, we have some that have come in. First one here, after the expected resource announcement this time next year, what is the next part of the strategy to unlock shareholder value?
Yeah, so two things. We're really focused on getting Columba pushed along to a PA, beyond that maiden resource to a PA. So that would be the next step for it. And depending what that resource looks like, it would either entail going right to a PA or more drilling to expand on the size of your resource and do a little bit of exploration to test those other veins, because we've got quite a few other targets to test there. But what we've drilled so far, we certainly see the potential for putting together 100 million ounces on the areas drilled to date. Now, I'm not saying that we think the maiden resource will be that big, but we see room there for where we've drilled already for that sort of resource potential. Oh, and then so the second thing is the preparation of our resource projects to get them advanced, with the objective of advancing them when we get into a silver bull market, and markets are more receptive to financing that, whether we would do that or whether we would attract a partner into those projects at that point. But we wanted them projects to be ready for that event.
Right. So on that, I guess, are you referring to, for, depending on the market, obviously, like looking for partners on the secondary assets, or also for Columba?
Well, we'd be you're looking at those secondary. We want to get Columba through to a PA, see what it's turning into. Our overall objective is to sell these projects at some point, not to be a miner ourselves.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So I guess on that, at Columba, with the current drill program underway, we saw the first results, obviously, a couple of weeks ago. With the remaining meters there, how long does that provide news flow for, I assume, going through the rest of the year?
Yeah, it'll be running in through November, possibly early December.
Okay, great. And then kind of touching on the potential at Columba, what you alluded to is seeing how things shape up, whether you go to the PEA right away, or if there's more drilling to do. Are you looking more at kind of stepping out and growing the footprint and testing new veins, or is there also a push to look deeper, seeing as you're seeing grade thickness increasing at depth as per the geologic model?
Yeah. Well, we need to do both things ultimately, and so we try to pick the low-hanging fruit first, so the shallower things first, and then start pushing them deeper. With shallow to modest depth holes, we can test a lot of that D vein trend and B vein, and then F vein is pretty modest depth drilling mostly, and so the next round we will be going deeper on certainly the D vein to find the bottom of that, but the focus will be running along strike sideways for it. And yes, there's quite a few vein structures there that need drilling that haven't been drilled. So it becomes sort of market dependent and on how much we can finance for. So it'd be nice to have enough of a budget to simultaneously do some exploration on veins that haven't been hit, because we're seeing not only what we can see at surface, but we're also hitting veins that don't come to surface. So there's a lot of potential nice surprises on the project. And so a lot of step out drilling to get us to maiden resource, but at the same time, we do need to at some point get back to the exploration and testing the other veins. But the priority will be to get ourselves into a maiden resource here at the beginning.
Right, and with that, I know it's a bit of a moving target, but do you have kind of an idea of how much drilling you need to do to get to that resource?
We might be able to get to it in the next 20,000 meters to inferred. That's the hope. We've got 50,000 meters designed, which is mostly aimed at resource definition, but also a little bit of exploration. So we're thinking overall 50,000 meters, and we're also think that 20, depending on what the results are, 20,000 meters might be enough to get to that maiden resource. Certainly hope so. And if we're getting consistent hits on those big step outs like that, we could probably at least have an inferred at that stage.
Right, yeah, and I was just going to ask that you'd be looking at an inferred resource, which is usually pretty typical with these types of deposits at this stage, correct?
Yeah, because you need a lot of infill drilling on veins to get enough spacing for the confidence. And so, yeah, it would mostly be inferred whatever you come out with versus typically weighted to be inferred.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So maybe just sticking with Columba, could you just touch on the engagement with the local community and Indigenous groups and kind of relations there and interactions?
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward at Columba. Really well situated in terms of its location. It's just off a major highway, 20-minute drive. It's not visual from the highway at all. You can't see it. Yeah, there's power within about 4 kilometers now. And the surface land is between one ejido group. There are a few what we call possessionarios inside of that who have parcels that we have agreements on. And then we're working on currently a long-term agreement on the key core portion there, we're well advanced on. And so after 4 years of operations there, our relationships locally there with those landowners are excellent. There's no town on the project. There is a fairly major-sized town, about 50,000 people north of us, approximately 30 kilometers, and so provides all the amenities that you need and require there. So I think that answers the question.
Yep, solid answer there. Okay. In terms of maybe just you touched on a little bit with potentially looking at financing down the road, and hopefully a better silver market, obviously. What's the current cash position that you have?
Yeah, so we're about $1.25 million, and we got about nearly the same in securities.
Okay, so that'll get you through this program and into the new year, essentially.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So I'm just looking through here. I don't see any other questions, but maybe I'll do a last call for the audience to see if we get more in. And in the meantime, if you could just maybe give us the final pitch and your final thoughts for Kootenay Silver.
Okay, so real excellent leverage to the silver price with those resources. We're positioning those resource projects for advancement in a silver bull market. And the real excitement is on the drill results and the advancement of this new high-grade discovery at Columba, where we think we're defining a new vein district that had not been recognized before. The reason it's never been recognized before is there's barely been any erosion. And so whatever was deposited there originally is still there, which makes this thing very exciting. the size, the physical size of the vein system there at Columba is of the size that you can find 100 million ounces or even multiples of that within it. And then the drill results we've gotten to date on the veins we have drilled certainly support that sort of expectation of that kind of potential.
Perfect. So with that, I don't see any other questions that have come in. So I think we'll wrap up there. But that was a great webinar to introduce new investors to the stock and as well provide an update on latest activities and kind of the direction you're looking at to drive shareholder value going into the future. So I would like to thank Jim from Kootenay Silver for taking the time today to host the webinar with Red Cloud Securities. And thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.